Hey guys, welcome to Expanded History, and enjoy this episode. At 9:30 in the morning on the 12th of January, 1943, on the outskirts of Leningrad, Soviet forces consisting of over 300,000 soldiers, supported by over 500 tanks and 900 combat aircraft from the Red Army, would launch one of the most monumental operations against German forces surrounding the city of Leningrad, tipping the strategic military balance in the Eastern Front during the peak of the German winter offensive. This is Operation Iskra. On the 8th of September, 1941, German and Finnish forces under Army Group North, commanded by Field Marshal Wilhelm Rita von Lieb, would, in support of Operation Barbarossa in the Eastern Front, finally cut off and encircle Leningrad, a strategic and major Soviet industrial port city located south of the Dnieper River, from Soviet forces. This would begin one of the longest and most destructive sieges in history. In response, Soviet forces would launch multiple failed operations to break the siege against Germany's 18th and 11th Army dug in around the city. For the next 3 months, Soviet forces would continuously launch these failed offensive operations against these German and Finnish lines surrounding the city, causing both sides to gain heavy casualties, until finally, Soviet forces would be forced to withdraw and regroup back into Soviet defensive lines. Shortly after these failed offensive operations to break the siege of Leningrad, and the start of the Soviets' winter counter-offensive campaign of 1943, Soviet forces, under the new command of Marshal Kirill Merzkov, would begin to plan the next large offensive operation against German forces besieging the city, in hopes of cutting off the German lines in half and creating a land connection between Leningrad and Soviet forces, finally putting an end to the long and brutal siege, while also inflicting a decisive defeat on Germany's Army Group North. This new and monumental operation would be known as Operation Iskra. Under the new planning of Operation Iskra, Soviet forces from the Red Army's Leningrad front, located on the western side of the city over the frozen Dnieper River, the Volga front, located on the eastern side of the city, and the Baltic Fleet, with over 20 divisions, 4,600 artillery, 500 tanks, and 900 combat aircraft, would be tasked with carrying out this massive strategic operation against German forces. To the resistance, Soviet forces would be facing an opposition of over 26 German and Finnish divisions under the experienced 18th Army under the command of General Major Lindemann, entrenched around the winter city. Although Soviet forces under the command of Marshal Merzkov were planning on breaking through the heavily defended lines surrounding the city from the south, German forces and intelligence were well aware of this operation. In preparation, the 18th Army, supported by the 96th Infantry Division and 5th Mountain Division, would set up a 280-mile wide front, defending from both the Leningrad front, opposite of the frozen Dnieper River, to the west of the Volga front to the east. This 280-mile wide German front would be entrenched with an extensive network of interconnected fortifications, trenches, and obstacles supported by artillery, mortars, and a few tank positions scattered across the defensive line. In addition, the 1st Air Fleet would provide air support for the defending Germans, but this would be later useless as the winter weather rendered this obsolete. Another 5 divisions would be sent to defend the narrow 10-mile wide corridor south of the city of Leningrad, between both the Leningrad front and the Volga front, called the Bottleneck, with orders to hold at all costs. This 10-mile wide land corridor would be the main target of the Red Army's thrust, as it was the narrowest gap of the German lines. Breaking through this position would cut off Germany's 18th Army in half from the north and south, allowing Soviet forces to encircle and destroy the remaining German forces trapped in it. The night before the assault, Soviet night bombers would commence a heavy bombing run on the German divisional headquarters and artillery positions to disrupt the German command and control, as well as German airfields and communication centers surrounding the city of Leningrad to disrupt the flow of German reinforcements. At 9:30 in the morning on the 12th of January, a nearly 2.5-hour Soviet artillery barrage would mark the start of Operation Iskra. Simultaneously, Soviet forces consisting of the 136th and 268th Rifle Divisions with supporting tanks would advance on a bridgehead located over the Dnieper River from the west. Immediately, these Soviet forces would be met with fierce resistance from machine gun fire and anti-tank artillery from German positions scattered opposite of the river until finally, Soviet forces, despite heavy losses, would capture the strategically important bridge, allowing for more divisions to pour over the Dnieper River opposite of the Leningrad front from the west. Following the next few hours, amongst the fierce battling, Red Army sappers constructed bridges near Marino under heavy and small arms fire from German positions, allowing a second wave of divisions to advance over the river in support of the rapidly moving Soviet assault from the west. At the same time, Red Army troops further south and north of Schleitzberg and further near Gorodok would not have the same success as their counterparts and were met with even more fierce resistance from the German and Finnish defensive positions, stopping their advance from the north. By the evening of the battle, Soviet command would decide to exploit the formed bridgehead near Marino, and troops attacking from the north were redeployed across the Dnieper River to attack from the south against the thinning German lines. While the assault from the Leningrad front saw much success with the rapidly moving Soviet forces from the west, the Volga front from the east would not see as much progress as these forces of the Soviet Second Shock Army were met with a stubborn and fierce defense by the German forces. Eventually, the Soviet Second Shock Army managed to envelop but not destroy the German strongpoints at Lipka and other strategically important defensive positions held by over 700 German soldiers and 16 well-defended bunkers spread across the German lines on the east side. In response, General Major Lindman would send one battle group consisting of 5 battalions from the 96th Infantry Division, supported by artillery and 4 Tiger tanks, to reinforce the dwindling German defenses to the west. For the next 5 days, Soviet forces slowly fought their way through heavy German defenses while simultaneously repelling German counterattacks consisting of infantry and armored units until finally, on the 14th of January, Soviet forces from the 12th Ski Brigade would flank around from the north and attack the German rear lines, causing German forces in Lipka and Schleitzberg to be cut off by the remaining 18th Army. Following the next day, lead elements from the Soviet 67th Army, 123rd Rifle Division would link up with the 2nd Shock Army, 372nd Rifle Division, finally cutting off the German forces in half from the north and south, breaking the Siege of Leningrad on the 18th of January, 1943, connecting the two fronts together. For the next few days, German forces from the 18th Army, still cut off in the north, would put up a stiff resistance against the encircling Red Army in the surrounding towns and woods, until finally they would be forced to abandon their defensive positions as well as their artillery and heavy equipment, officially putting an end to Operation Iskra on the 30th of January, 1943. Following the connection of the two Soviet fronts from the east and west, Soviet forces were now able to send much-needed supplies and reinforcements to the battle-torn city of Leningrad, as well as refortifying defensive positions on the new Soviet front to repel any chance of a surprise counterattack from German forces to recapture the winter city. While Operation Iskra stopped the brutal siege of Leningrad against Germany's 18th Army under the command of General Major Lindman, it also became one of the first key strategic victories for Soviet forces prior to the new 1943 winter counteroffensive against the bogged-down German forces on the Eastern Front. In total, over 40,000 soldiers would be killed on both sides during this offensive operation, with another estimated 90,000 soldiers being wounded or captured. It is also worth noting that during this operation, the first undamaged German Tiger tank would be found and captured by Soviet forces, where it would be taken and evaluated for key information and intelligence gathering. In the end, the Red Army would launch one of the most monumental operations against German forces surrounding the Siege of Leningrad, tipping the strategic military balance in the Eastern Front during the peak of the German winter offensive.